Between 2011 and 2012, Canada was rocked by one of the most bizarre crimes in its history. The target. Not diamonds, not gold, not cash. Maple syrup. Yes. Maple syrup. Over several months, thieves managed to steal 3,000 tons of maple syrup, worth about $18 million, from a heavily guarded warehouse in Quebec. For context, that's enough syrup to drown 180,000 people in pancake topping. Not that anyone's doing that math. Except me. I did that math. This is the true story of the stickiest crime in Canadian history: the thieves who thought they could get away with it, and the investigators who had to explain to the world that yes, this actually happened, and no, it's not a joke. Buckle up. This is going to get weird. First, you need to understand something absolutely insane about Canada. They have a strategic maple syrup reserve. Like the way countries have oil reserves or gold reserves, Canada has a literal stockpile of maple syrup stored in warehouses, just in case. In case of what? A pancake emergency. A waffle apocalypse. The organization is called the Federation of Quebec Maple Syrup Producers, which honestly sounds way more official than it has any right to be for syrup. This organization controls about 77% of the world's maple syrup supply. They regulate production, set prices, and maintain the strategic reserve in a massive warehouse in Laurierville, Quebec. The reserve holds about 30 million pounds of syrup at any given time, stored in huge barrels, each containing about 45 gallons of sweet liquid gold. Or, sticky tree blood. However you want to look at it. The warehouse had security. Guards, cameras, locks. But here's the thing nobody thought about. Who was going to steal maple syrup? It's heavy, it's sticky, and it's not exactly easy to fence on the black market like diamonds or art. Turns out, someone had a plan. In July 2012, an inspector from the Federation went to do a routine check of the warehouse. Standard procedure: walk through, make sure the barrels are secure, count inventory, and go home. Except when he tapped one of the barrels, something was wrong. It was too light. He opened it. Empty. Weird, he thought. Must be a labeling error. He checked another barrel. Empty. And another. Empty. The inspector's confusion turned to panic as he realized hundreds of barrels were empty. But here's the genius part, and I use the word genius very loosely here. The thieves didn't steal the barrels. They just stole the syrup. They had carefully drained the barrels, resealed them, and put them back on the shelves. For months, the warehouse had been storing thousands of empty barrels, and nobody noticed. When the final count was done, the number was staggering: 3,000 tons of maple syrup, gone. $18 million worth. The equivalent of about 9,571 barrels completely drained. The media had an absolute field day. Sweet crime. Sticky situation for Canadian police. The Great Maple Syrup Heist. The New York Times ran the story. The BBC covered it. Comedy shows made jokes for weeks. Canada's national embarrassment was complete, but the investigators weren't laughing. They had a massive theft on their hands and absolutely no idea where to start. Lead investigator Claude Salvoy, yes, that's his real name, and yes, it's perfectly Canadian. Assembled a task force. This was no ordinary theft. The logistics alone were mind-boggling. To steal 3,000 tons of syrup, you need multiple vehicles because syrup is heavy, access to the warehouse over months, a buyer willing to purchase stolen syrup, a way to transport and hide it, and nerves of steel to pull off the stickiest heist in history. Detective Salvoy started reviewing security footage. And that's when they spotted him, the truck driver named Etienne Vanek, making regular trips to the warehouse at odd hours. Vanek had legitimate business at the warehouse. He was a transporter who moved syrup for various producers. But his trips were more frequent than they should be. Investigators dug deeper. They discovered Vanek had been renting a storage facility about 30 minutes away. When police obtained a warrant and raided it, they found something incredible: hundreds of barrels of maple syrup. But wait, it gets better. They also found a hose system the thieves had been using. These absolute madmen had rigged up a siphoning operation. They would roll the official Federation barrels to a hidden area, drain the syrup through hoses into different barrels, seal the official ones back up with water, or just leave them empty, then transport the stolen syrup to the storage facility. They literally siphon maple syrup like it was gasoline. But Van Eck wasn't working alone. He was just the muscle, or I guess, the guy with a truck and flexible morals. The real mastermind was a man named Richard Vallières. Richard was a maple syrup producer who had a very Canadian grudge. He was angry at the Federation for controlling syrup prices and limiting how much he could produce. See, the Federation has strict quotas. If you produce too much syrup, they fine you or confiscate it. It's like OPEC, but for pancakes. Richard thought this was unfair, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. His brilliant plan: steal massive amounts of syrup from the reserves, sell it on the black market. Yes, there's a maple syrup black market, make millions, and stick it to the Federation. And for a while, it worked. Richard had connections with buyers in the United States and other countries who were willing to purchase syrup, no questions asked, at below market prices. He recruited Van Eck and several other accomplices to help with the physical theft. Over the course of months, they systematically drained the reserve, barrel by barrel, selling the stolen syrup across North America. They made millions. But then they made a mistake. Actually, they made several mistakes. First, they got greedy. 3,000 tons is a lot of syrup. That's not subtle. That's not a little off the top. That's draining an entire national reserve. Second, the syrup market is small. When massive quantities of below-price syrup started flooding the market, buyers started asking questions. And third, and this is my favorite part, one of the accomplices tried to sell some of the stolen syrup back to the Federation. I'm not kidding. He literally tried to sell stolen syrup back to the people he stole it from. That's when the whole operation collapsed. In December 2012, police arrested Richard Vallières, Etienne Van Eck, and 14 other people connected to the heist. The trial was, well, it was ridiculous. The prosecution had to stand in front of a judge and jury and seriously explain how someone stole 3,000 tons of maple syrup. Defense attorneys argued their clients were fighting against an unjust monopoly. The judge had to maintain a straight face while discussing syrup siphoning techniques and barrel substitution methods. The evidence was overwhelming: security footage, financial records showing millions in suspicious syrup sales, text messages between conspirators literally discussing syrup theft, and physical evidence like hoses, empty barrels, and rental agreements. In 2016, Richard Vallières was convicted and sentenced to 8 years in prison, plus ordered to pay a $9.4 million fine. Etienne Van Eck got 6 years. Several other accomplices received shorter sentences. About 2/3 of the stolen syrup was eventually recovered, though some of it had already been consumed by unsuspecting pancake lovers across North America. Which means somewhere out there, someone poured stolen maple syrup on their waffles and had no idea they were consuming hot property. The ultimate victimless crime. The Great Maple Syrup Heist changed everything. The Federation completely overhauled security at their reserves. New cameras, weight sensors on barrels, more frequent inspections. Basically, they went from casual syrup storage to Fort Knox but sticky. The story became legendary. It inspired documentaries, podcasts, books, and even a Netflix documentary called Dirty Money that featured an entire episode about it. Canada's reputation took a hit, but honestly, it's the most Canadian crime imaginable. Sorry, we didn't notice someone stole our entire national syrup reserve. Richard Vallières was released from prison in 2020. In interviews, he's remained defiant, claiming he was fighting against an unjust system. The maple syrup industry continues to thrive. The Federation still controls production. The strategic reserve still exists, though now it's much harder to rob. And somewhere in Quebec, security guards are still checking barrels, tapping them, making sure they're full. Because apparently, you can't trust anyone around liquid gold. The Great Maple Syrup Heist remains one of the strangest crimes in modern history. It had everything: a legitimate mastermind, an elaborate plan, months of execution, millions of dollars, international sales, and a product that was literally syrup. Not diamonds, not art, not cash. Tree juice. But here's the thing, it almost worked. If they hadn't gotten greedy, if they'd stolen less, if they'd been more careful, they might have pulled it off. Instead, they're forever known as the guys who got caught stealing Canada's pancake topping. So the next time you pour maple syrup on your pancakes, remember, somewhere in Canada, there's a warehouse full of this stuff, guarded like it's the crown jewels. Because apparently, in Canada, it basically is. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to follow for more weird stories.